The hydroplate was developed by Dr. Walt Brown. He's an Army Ranger, paratrooper, MIT, PhD from mechanical engineering. And most theories, they take a look at the effect and try and figure out what caused it. They know what the effect is, but they really don't know the cause. This is different. He sets up the cause with one assumption. Just one assumption, then he lets the laws of physics go at it, and then that explains what we see in the world around us. And his one assumption is half of the ocean was inside the Earth at one time. How it got there is not part of the theory. So just think of the Earth as a big apple, and the skin is 60 miles thick made of granite, and then there's a layer of water about a mile thick, and then underneath that there's basalt. And the granite and basalt are touching each other at certain places around the Earth. Okay, that's his one assumption. And then he lets the laws of physics go at it. You got the moon tugging on the crust. And back then, the crust wasn't broken into plates like it is today. It was just the crust. So it's going to stretch and compress twice a day. It's going to generate heat. Heat goes into the water. Water gets hotter and hotter and hotter. It wants to boil, but it can't because there's no room to expand. And then at 705 degrees and 3,200 psi, it becomes supercritical water. They know about it. It's not very well known, but they've known about it for 100 years, where it's not really water and it's not really steam, but whatever it is, it dissolves things like crazy. So now it's dissolving the mantle above, or the granite above, and the basalt below, and mixing stuff together and making stuff like limestone and silica and quartz and salts in the subterranean chamber. And then eventually the crust gets weak enough where it cracks. You know, as more and more pressure, Walt Brown thinks it's probably 372,000 psi in that water. And then when it just cracks, it's going to rip around the Earth in two directions, that crack does, and like a seam on the baseball, and then it cracks and then it comes together again. And then the water just erupts out of there with tremendous force. And that's how it could rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And people say, well, if that happened on the Earth, wouldn't it leave a mark? And the mark, yeah, it did. It's the mid-oceanic ridge. That's a 46,000-mile mountain range that goes around the bottoms of the oceans. And that's where the water was shooting up. So now you got two cliffs 60 miles high, and they're crumbling into this supersonic water flowing up. Because on Earth, you can only have a cliff 5 miles high, or it's going to crumble. Now these are 60 miles high. So that's where all this granite and basalt, the sedimentary rock. I always wondered, where did all this sediment come from for the sedimentary rock? Well, it was getting eroded away from the fountains. Okay, and then now that you got the cliffs getting wider and wider and wider, well, pretty soon there's nothing pushing down on the mid-Atlantic ridge, and it bulges. So now you got North America and South America sliding to the west, Africa and Europe sliding to the east, and they keep going until they hit resistance, and then they buckle up and form mountains. And so now you got a big mass on a small base, and that sinks in. Well, if something sinks in, something's got to rise up, and that's how the plateaus form. They really can't explain how a plateau forms in the Colorado anyway. And so then the same thing, and then with the mid-oceanic ridge rising up everywhere, something has to sink in, and that's the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean sunk in, and that's why you get the ring of fire. That's why you got all those volcanoes down there, and there's a lot of molten, and that's why you got the trenches in the Pacific. And so then all the water gushes off the continents, which was, the water was covering the continents. Now it gushes off, cuts those submarine canyons, and then the continents sink down and the oceans rise up and fill that in. And then again, some of the stuff was going with such tremendous force that it escaped our gravitational pull. And it just kept on going. And that's where the the theory started with 10 kilometers thick and then 10 miles thick and now 60 miles thick, because he keeps adding stuff. He thinks that the trans-Neptune objects came from inside the Earth. He thinks that I think Pluto could even be formed that way. And so it's an interesting theory. It may not be right on every detail, but I think the framework is very, very solid and very robust because it makes accurate predictions. And so that's my 5-minute attempt at explaining the hydroplate.